Cornered, written by yours truly. Mr. Gonzalez was a bank employee in Mexico City during the last years of the Porfiriato. He gained the confidence of the owner of the bank, Mr. Martinez, and became a bank executive. Mr. Martinez thought that Mr. Gonzalez would be a very good husband for his daughter, Miss Maria Luisa Martinez. He arranged for the marriage, which took place in 1910. It was very common in the early 1900s for the rich people of Mexico City to arrange the marriages of their children. They arranged marriages for their families to gain wealth and social status. The marriage with Maria Luisa Martinez helped Mr. Gonzalez set up a business in 1911. On the other hand, the marriage offered Maria Luisa a responsible man who had potential to become a successful businessman. Mr. Gonzalez set up a store in front of the park with a Morisco kiosk in Santa Maria de Ribera. He sold fine French cloth to the rich people in the neighborhood. The cloth was made by the Pasamaneria Francesa textile mill in the same neighborhood. Mr. Gonzalez had a large house built also in the Santa Maria de Ribera neighborhood, thanks to a loan from Mr. Martinez. 1911 was a difficult year to start a business in Mexico. 2 months before Mr. Gonzalez opened his business in January of 1911, Francisco Madero encouraged the Mexican people to revolt against the 30-year dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz. 4 months after Mr. Gonzalez opened his store, the growing rebellion in Mexico made Porfirio Diaz leave Mexico and go to France. The political situation in Mexico was very unstable. The bankers, including Mr. Martinez, were very worried about the unstable situation. Most of the bankers wished for a return to the days when Don Porfirio Diaz was president. Mr. Martinez thought, "I hope that Madero will die very soon and Don Porfirio will return to Mexico." But of course, that didn't happen. A few months after Don Porfirio Diaz went to France, Madero won the election and became the president of Mexico in November 1911. Mr. Martinez commented to Mr. Gonzalez, "Madero will not be able to keep order in a country like Mexico, like Don Porfirio did. Madero's days are numbered." Indeed, Madero had to try to put order in Mexico and make all Mexicans obey his authority as president. He had to defeat 2 rebellions, one by Pascual Orozco in the north and one by Emiliano Zapata in the south. These 2 leaders wanted the president to implement land reform for the campesinos and labor reform for the miners and factory workers. However, Francisco Madero came from a family of bankers and rich businessmen. Madero's disagreement with the government of Porfirio Diaz was that Diaz only represented the interest of his group of friends. Madero wanted the government to protect the interest of all rich Mexicans, not just the friends of the president. Madero was not interested in land reform for the campesinos or labor reform for the miners and factory workers. Consequently, he asked his strongest general, Victoriano Huerta, to defeat Orozco and Zapata. Huerta showed great ability in military strategy against these 2 leaders. In fact, Orozco joined Huerta after being defeated by him. The problem for Madero was that Huerta had the great personal ambition of being more than a general. He wanted to become the president of Mexico. Consequently, Madero's presidency only lasted about 1.5 years, because in February 1913, Huerta had Madero killed. But the political instability continued, as Huerta's presidency also lasted for only 1.5 years. In August 1914, Venustiano Carranza entered Mexico City to defeat Huerta's dictatorship and become the interim president. The armies led by Francisco Villa and Emiliano Zapata continued to demand land reform and labor reform. Since Carranza wasn't interested in these reforms, he had to look for a military solution, which obliged him to spend most of the money and resources of Mexico on war. With this political instability, the economy of Mexico went from bad to worse from 1913 to 1917. The paper money that people used to buy goods and services had always been printed by the government, of course. But now paper money was also being printed by Villa in Chihuahua and by Zapata in Morelos and Guerrero. Since three different groups were printing money, the inflation was very high in Mexico, which caused many banks to go bankrupt. The bank of Mr. Martinez went bankrupt in 1915. He died of a heart attack the next month. The brother of Maria Luisa Martinez invested the little money he still had to set up a small store in the Tacubaya neighborhood. He sold Henneken products, including rope, string, gunny sacks, hammocks, carpets, and mats. Henneken was still a very good business at that time. Mr. Gonzalez and Maria Luisa Martinez had two sons, one in 1913 and one in 1915. Due to the difficult economic situation, they did not want to have any more children. Nevertheless, their third son, Gregorio, was born in 1919. Many who knew the family said that Gregorio was born with the rebellious spirit of Zapata, who was killed by Carranza's men in 1919. In the eyes of Mr. Gonzalez, his wife had lost value. He had married her to gain wealth and status, and she had helped him start his business. But now she was no longer rich, and Mr. Gonzalez began to treat her differently. Mr. Gonzalez thought only about his own advantage. He was not grateful for the help that the family of his wife had given him. Maria Luisa Martinez asked her husband to take her to parties like he had done before, but Mr. Gonzalez told her not to bother him because he was very busy. He spent his free time with his influential friends in the government and with two ladies that were his lovers. As time passed, the three sons grew up, and the first two sons went to work in their father's business. They each made a lot of money, got married, and bought a house in the Santa Maria de Ribera neighborhood. However, Gregorio had other ideas. He dreamt of studying engineering and working to build new factories in Mexico. Since Gregorio was inspired by President Lázaro Cárdenas, he wanted to help Mexico become an industrial country. Mr. Gonzalez didn't want Gregorio to study engineering in the university. He said, "You don't need to spend a lot of time reading books and obeying teachers. I can teach you how to make money and be successful." Gregorio's dreams caused him to study very hard. He began his last year of high school in August 1936, 8 months after President Cárdenas founded the IPN. Mr. Gonzalez insisted that Gregorio learn to sell textile products. He warned Gregorio not to study in the university or in the IPN because if he did, he would lose his inheritance from his father. Gregorio graduated from high school in June 1937 and managed to enter the engineering school of the IPN, which at that time was in the Casco de Santo Tomas neighborhood. He started studying in the IPN and working part-time as a waiter. His father was very angry with him. He hoped that Gregorio would change his mind and become a businessman like his brothers. During Gregorio's first year in the IPN, President Cardenas nationalized Mexican oil in March of 1938 and paid a compensation to U.S. oil companies for the expropriation. Mexican citizens from all social classes donated money and jewelry, and also chickens and goats and other goods to help the government cover the payment to the U.S. oil companies. Mr. Gonzalez was very angry and told his wife, "This president is going to cause the Mexican economy to suffer, and we will all pay the price." After a few days of being very angry, Mr. Gonzalez got drunk. Maria Luisa begged her husband to calm down and not have any more drinks that night. Mr. Gonzalez hit his wife and demanded that she be quiet. Gregorio defended his mother and told his father to get out of the house. His father left and never came back. 1 month later, Gregorio and his mother received a notice from his father's lawyer ordering them to vacate the house. Gregorio suggested that his mother hire a lawyer. His mother told him, "Your father knows very influential people in the government. My brother encouraged me years ago to save money in a secret bank account. He told me that one day your father would leave us without anything. I have some money saved. I would rather spend it on building a little house than on hiring a lawyer. We can build a house on the property of my brother in the Tacubaya neighborhood. From there you can take the streetcar to the engineering school of the IPN in the Cascos de Santo Tomas neighborhood." Gregorio and his mother moved to his uncle's house and lived there until their house was finished. They moved into their little house on the property of Gregorio's uncle at the end of 1938. Unfortunately, things kept getting worse for Maria Luisa and her brother. After Gregorio finished his first year at the IPN in the summer of 1939, his uncle received a notice from a lawyer. The Commerce Bank, known as Bancomer, was demanding that Gregorio's uncle vacate his property in the Tacubaya neighborhood. The bank was going to take the property over as payment for the loans that his uncle had taken out. His uncle's Henneken business had gone bankrupt. Henneken had been a very good business for many years, but many changes had taken place in the business. President Cardenas carried out widespread land reform for the campesinos in 1938. In the Yucatan, the large Henneken plantations became collective farms that shared the profits of the business with the campesinos. Since the campesinos had a better salary, the old plantation work owners thought of a plan to get their land back. They started offering the campesinos private loans at high interest rates to build better houses. Due to the high interest, the campesinos wouldn't be able to pay the loans back, and the old landowners planned to take over the collective farms of Henneken. President Cardenas found out about this trick and formed a credit union to lend money at low interest to the campesinos. The president was successful in keeping the old landowners from carrying out their diabolic plan. The collective farms continued to operate in the interest of the campesinos of the Yucatan. The commercialization of Henneken was centralized by the government to help the collective farms sell their product. Although these changes were very good for the campesinos in the Yucatan, they were not favorable for the business of Gregorio's uncle. He could not pay his loans back to the Commerce Bank. In the summer of 1939, Gregorio's uncle started working for Pemex, and he managed to get a job for his wife and for his sister Maria Luisa as cooks in one of the cafeterias of Pemex. President Cardenas had expropriated Mexican oil because U.S. oil companies had refused to increase the salary of their petroleum workers or improve their working conditions. The president gave the petroleum workers a good salary, health care, and economical housing. Maria Luisa and her brother were each able to get a small house in a Pemex housing development. Unfortunately, there was another difficulty for Gregorio's family. His mother started to feel pain in her chest. She went to the health service of Pemex, and they told her that she needed a very delicate operation or she would die within a few months. They said that they could provide the hospital services and the surgeon, but that she had to pay for some very expensive surgical materials. Maria Luisa told the news to her brother and Gregorio. One day, on the streetcar, someone was passing out flyers offering emergency loans. Gregorio went to talk to the person offering the loans. This person was an old man named Don Jose, and he had a large house in the Tacubaya neighborhood. He offered loans at a very high interest rate. The interest rate was 100% per year. Gregorio did not know anything about taking a loan out. He signed the papers and received enough money to pay for the surgical materials that his mother needed. Gregorio told his mother and uncle that the money came from a special loan at low interest from the IPN. Maria Luisa Martinez had surgery a few weeks later and spent 1 month in the hospital. She recovered well and was soon back home. Every payday, Gregorio went to the old man's house in Tacubaya and made a payment, but it was only enough to pay the interest. The capital of the loan never changed. By the summer of 1940, after Gregorio had made payments for a year, the money he owed the old man was the same as the amount he had borrowed. Gregorio told a friend and fellow student at the IPN about his problem with the loan. Gregorio asked his friend, "What do you suggest that I do?" His friend recommended that Gregorio stop paying the loan. Gregorio said, "But if I do that, the old man will take our house and sell it." Gregorio and his friend had something in common. They both had very little tolerance for injustice, and they both saw the rich people of the city as very abusive. Gregorio's friend laughed and said, "Why don't you just kill the old man? It wouldn't hurt Mexico City to lose a rich man living like a parasite off honest, hard-working people." Gregorio didn't know if he was serious or joking. He laughed and changed the subject. That night he couldn't stop thinking about his friend's comment. A few days later, Gregorio got off work and went to make a payment on the loan. It was 10 p.m. when he knocked on the door and waited for the old man to answer. He heard the old man's voice. "Who is it?" Gregorio identified himself. The old man told him to enter the house. Gregorio found the old man lying sick in his bedroom. He asked Gregorio to bring him a glass of water. When Gregorio went to get the glass of water, he saw a knife in the kitchen. Gregorio put the knife in his back pocket and took the glass of water to the old man. When the old man lifted the glass to drink, Gregorio pushed the knife into his chest and into his heart, and the old man fell backward onto his bed. Blood was coming out of his chest very quickly and causing a large stain on the bedsheet. Since he had not planned the murder, Gregorio was not wearing gloves when he grabbed the knife. He knew that his fingerprints would be on the knife. So he withdrew the knife from the old man's chest and put it in a towel that he found in the bathroom. Then he walked out of the old man's house and along the street towards home. Nobody was in the street. Apparently nobody saw Gregorio. He arrived home a little before 11. Everybody in his family was asleep. He realized that his shirt and pants were splattered with blood. He took a quick shower and then rolled up his bloody clothes, the towel, and the knife. He tied the bundle up with some string. He thought, I need to think about how to get rid of these things. Gregorio felt very tired all of a sudden and went to sleep. He dreamt about the murder and about the old man looking him in the eyes as he died. He woke up sweating and drank a glass of water. He was in a panic. He thought, I need to get rid of the bloody clothes immediately. He picked up the bundle, put matches in his pocket, and left his house at about 2:30 in the morning to walk to Chapultepec Park. He found a little cave in the forest and prepared a campfire with a lot of small branches, some old dry leaves, and the matches that he had brought. Everything worked out very well. The clothes were completely burnt when he finished. The handle of the knife was burnt, and he was sure that there were no fingerprints. Gregorio walked back home and arrived at about 5 in the morning. He studied for a little while, and then he ate breakfast before going to the IPN. 2 weeks later, while Gregorio was studying at home, a policeman came to visit him. He asked Gregorio to accompany him to the police station. He told Gregorio that he had found Gregorio's name on the client list of a man murdered in the Tacubaya neighborhood. The policeman said that he noticed that Gregorio always made a payment on the last 2 days of each month. The old man had been killed on the last day of July. The policeman said that Gregorio was one of the suspects of the murder. Of course, Gregorio pretended not to know anything. Gregorio asked, why would anyone want to murder Don Jose? The policeman answered, I don't know. I thought maybe you could tell me that. Gregorio replied very calmly, no, I don't know anyone that wanted to kill him. The policeman asked, what were you doing on July 31st, the night of the murder? Gregorio answered, I was studying until a little after midnight. Then I felt very hungry, but didn't have any food in the house. Since I had to make a payment to Don Jose the next day, I didn't want to spend any money on food. At about 12:30, I left the house to walk to Chapultepec Lake. I was fishing for a little while and then caught a big carp. I arrived back home a little after 2:30 and fried the fish and ate it. The policeman asked, did anyone see you walking in the forest that night? Gregorio said, no, I don't think so. He asked, did you see anyone? Gregorio responded, no, I rarely see anyone when I walk at that time of night in the forest. The policeman asked him a few more questions. Then he advised Gregorio to get more sleep, because he said that he looked very tired. He told Gregorio not to leave Mexico City until the investigation was finished, and then walked away. The policeman came back a week later to ask Gregorio questions again. He didn't ask anything new, just the same old questions. Then another 2 weeks went by before the third visit. The policeman asked the same questions and left after a brief time. Then came the fourth visit a week later on Friday, September 11th. The policeman began by asking the same questions. Gregorio felt calm at first. The policeman had never managed to shake him up before. Why should he be able to do it this time? But this time, the policeman was very self-assured. He said, so you say that you were studying on the night of the murder. Then you became hungry and went for a walk to Chapultepec Lake. That's right, officer, Gregorio replied calmly. It was a beautiful night with a full moon, and I was hungry. The policeman asked, "Who saw you in the forest?" Gregorio answered, "I don't think anybody saw me in the forest, officer." The policeman continued, "Who did you see in the forest?" Gregorio replied, "I didn't see anybody." The policeman laughed. He said, "I met a man who was walking in the forest on the same night. He was looking for his dog that had run away from his house. The poor dog was scared by a big owl that almost grabbed it with its open claws. The dog ran away from the man's house as fast as it could, and surely got lost in the forest. The man told me that he didn't see anybody in the forest." Gregorio thought that the policeman was playing a trick and wasn't worried. "The forest is a very big place, officer," he said. "That's true," replied the policeman, "big enough to get lost." The guy never found his dog and returned home at about 2:30. He saw a man walking along the road very near your house. Gregorio tried to remain calm and said, "Perhaps he saw me, officer." The policeman laughed again and said, "That's possible. You fit the description that he gave me. But it's interesting. He told me that the man he saw was walking away from your house, not towards it. And you say that at about 2:30 you were walking towards your house." Gregorio forced a laugh and said, "Then it wasn't me. Maybe it was the murderer." "That's what I was thinking," answered the policeman. "The man who lost his dog told me that the guy he saw had something in his right hand. It looked like some old clothes rolled up and tied with a string." Gregorio tried not to show his surprise. He thought, "The guy saw me with my bundle of clothes." He answered the policeman, "It seems that you're making progress with the case, officer. Congratulations. Now you need to find out who that man is." "Exactly," replied the policeman. "That's why I spent all day looking in the forest with a hound that has a very good snout for smelling blood. What do you think I found?" Gregorio said, "Who knows, officer?" The policeman explained, "After about 4 hours, the dog was suddenly very agitated next to a small cave." The policeman paused and looked Gregorio in the eyes. Then he continued, "When I looked into the cave, I found a bunch of ashes in an old campfire with little pieces of burnt cloth and a burnt knife. There was a box of matches nearby. So I carefully put it in a plastic bag and took it to the police lab. What do you think we found on the box of matches?" Gregorio replied, "I don't know, officer. What did you find?" Gregorio felt his heart sink to his feet. He felt a strange calmness, but not like before. At first he was sure that the policeman would ask the same questions and that he would give the same answers. But now his feeling of calmness was a kind of resignation. Maybe he would be arrested, or maybe not. The policeman continued, "We found some fingerprints on the matches, on the box of matches, but they were impossible to identify." Gregorio suddenly felt a wave of relief passing through his body. He casually commented to the policeman, "You are very thorough, officer. Maybe you'll have better luck with some other piece of evidence that you find." The policeman declared some fingerprints were impossible to identify, but one was in good condition. The policeman paused and looked Gregorio in the eyes again. Gregorio thought he was probably bluffing. He thought, what evidence does the policeman really have? Only time would tell. Who thinks of taking a hound to a big forest to look for some little piece of evidence? The policeman was either very clever or very lucky. The policeman continued, "I'm still waiting for the information on that fingerprint. I'll be back to talk to you again soon." He got up, said goodbye, and walked out the door. Gregorio had had trouble sleeping since the murder. He had come to the conclusion that murder is a very unnatural act that upsets the mind and body. He didn't know if he would go to prison, but he knew that he would never again find tranquility. While Gregorio was waiting for the next visit of the policeman, he spent all his time trying to justify the murder to himself. He went to his classes, but he wasn't paying attention to the professors. He bought a book on philosophy to try to find a justification for the murder. The book explained that there are 4 arguments to consider for an action: the legal argument, the moral argument, the religious argument, and the spiritual argument. Since according to the law, Gregorio was a murderer, the legal argument wouldn't help him. He thought, according to moral ethics, there are some situations that require an individual to take an action that is not approved by the law. For example, he thought, if someone threatens to kill your child and you have the moral obligation to protect your child, even if you have to kill the aggressor. Gregorio thought, so I was defending myself from the old man. He was abusing my need for a loan by making me pay him every payday for many years. But Gregorio knew that the old man was demanding money, while Gregorio demanded the old man's life. There was no moral equivalency. The religious argument wasn't helpful either. The 10 Commandments clearly say that murder is a capital sin. Then Gregorio met a student at the IPN who was from Spain. His family had escaped from Spain after Franco had become the dictator of his country. President Cardenas had accepted many refugees from Spain between 1936 and 1939. The Spanish student told Gregorio that religions are outdated. He said that God wants everyone to become strong and free themselves from injustice. Gregorio thought, this is the spiritual argument I've been looking for. Obviously, God didn't want me to continue suffering from the injustice of Don Jose. Gregorio's mind never rested because he couldn't really convince himself that God wanted him to kill Don Jose. But he had begun thinking about God and the meaning of his life. One night, Gregorio had a strange dream. In his dream, he was walking home on the streetcar after school at about 8 o'clock at night. The streetcar broke down and everyone started walking. Gregorio was walking towards his house when suddenly he didn't recognize anything around him. He realized that he didn't know where he was. He was on a dirt road that was very dark, and he couldn't see any houses. He felt lost and confused. He heard a horse approaching, and then a campesino asked him, "Would you like me to take you somewhere?" Gregorio replied, "Can you take me to my house near the Tacubaya neighborhood?" The campesino answered, "We are a long way from Tacubaya, but we are very close to Teotihuacan. I can take you there. You look like you come from Teotihuacan." Gregorio was confused and looked at himself. He was dressed like an indigenous person from ancient Mexico. They arrived to Teotihuacan, and the campesino stopped the horse next to the Pyramid of the Sun, where there was an indigenous woman standing alone. Gregorio realized that the woman was his mother. She said, "I've been waiting for you to come home, son. You left me when you started telling me a lie. I asked God to bring you back." At that moment, Gregorio woke up. The dream seemed very real. Now that he was awake, Gregorio still felt lost and confused like in the dream. He realized that the dream was telling him to talk to his mother. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, but he went to wake his mother up. He told her about the loan he had taken out and about killing Don Jose. She said, "I have always taught you values, Gregorio. Think about the correct thing to do." Gregorio answered, "I have been thinking a lot lately about justifying the murder of Don Jose to myself. But I haven't been able to find any justification. Now I must accept my mistake and turn myself in to the police." His mother began to cry. She said, "I will ask God to help you, and I will call the lawyer who always worked for my father, Mr. Martinez." Gregorio ate breakfast and went to the police station. His mother called the lawyer that she knew, Don Felipe. He was the best commercial lawyer in Mexico City. He told Maria Luisa to calm down and that he would call a good criminal lawyer. That afternoon, Maria Luisa received a call from a criminal lawyer. He said, "Mrs. Maria Luisa Martinez?" Maria Luisa replied, "Yes, I am Maria Luisa. Can I help you?" The lawyer continued, "My friend Don Felipe filled me in about your son's situation. I'm going to start working on his case immediately." Maria Luisa told the lawyer, "I am sorry to say that I don't have any money to pay you." The criminal lawyer replied, "Don't worry. Don Felipe will pay for everything. I'm going to go to the police station in an hour and talk with your son." Maria Luisa thanked him several times and hung up the phone. Although she was grateful for the help, she imagined Gregorio in prison. The next day, the criminal lawyer called Maria Luisa. He said, "I have been talking to my good friends in the government. I can't promise you anything yet, but I will do whatever I can. I'll call you back in 1 week. Stay calm and don't do anything drastic." Maria Luisa thanked him again. Now she had to wait and wish that something would happen to save her son from prison. 10 days later, on Monday, October 4th, she received a call from the criminal lawyer. He said, "Mrs. Maria Luisa Martinez, we have been invited to talk to the president. I will pick you up in an hour. Put your best dress on and wait for me in front of your house. There is no time to waste." The lawyer drove Maria Luisa to Los Pinos. They parked the car and went to the office of the president, where they waited for an hour. Then a young man approached them and took them inside the president's office. The young man introduced the criminal lawyer and Mrs. Maria Luisa Martinez to President Cardenas. The president said, "My aides have filled me in about the case of your son, Mrs. Martinez. Many people have found themselves in the same situation, with a loan that they can't pay off. I have set up a credit union for campesinos to keep them from being victims of unfair loan practices. I would like to do the same for the workers in the country. There are many things that I would like to do, but my time has run out. In 7 weeks, my term as President of Mexico will end. I know that Gregorio wanted to help you, Mrs. Martinez, and that is the reason that he took the loan out. He fell into a trap of a person who lends money at 100% interest per year. Of course, I don't agree with the solution that your son found to his problem. But desperate people do desperate things. I have a proposal, Mrs. Martinez, but I wanted to talk to you before I talk to your son. I can offer your son a presidential pardon to keep him from going to prison. But I can only do that under one condition. He must join the Mexican army. I will send him to the Heroico Colegio Militar where he can study engineering. However, the army will not let him leave the military college for 6 years. He will not have any vacations during that time. He will be under house arrest. You will be able to visit him at the military college. If you accept, I will sign the order today. Of course, Maria Luisa accepted, and the police took Gregorio to the military college that same day. Gregorio had to adjust to military discipline, which was very different from his life in the IPN. But each time that he thought that the military college was difficult, he reminded himself that the alternative was prison, and it didn't seem so bad.